Oh boy, here we are with Bitcoin finally having hit the $100,000 mark. In fact, we're already over, as you can see. Since we did that, it was just a question of time until we got there eventually. So I thought, let's talk about this important milestone that many of us have really looked forward to for a while. I want to quickly look at the triggers that finally got us over the $100,000 mark. And of course, what could happen next going forward with the price of Bitcoin and maybe other cryptocurrencies as well. And what I'm planning to do with my Bitcoin holdings going forward. But first off, let's remind ourselves that over a 1 year period, we are up 145%. Absolutely mind-boggling numbers, ladies and gentlemen. Just in the last month, up 48%. I mean, crazy stuff. But on a year-to-date basis over here, you can see the biggest cryptocurrencies in the world. Obviously, Bitcoin by far the biggest. Up year-to-date 142%. And you don't have too many others. Now, obviously, XRP, Ripple, recently had some great news for them. So they went up quite significantly. And a couple of other ones, Dogecoin, if you were invested in that, great. But many others actually underperformed Bitcoin. Now, we have been hovering around the 100K mark for quite a while, almost there. Last few days, 98, 99, but we never really got there. And obviously, the big part was the selling pressure, because a lot of people actually had this barrier of 100K where they want to take profits. So many people wrote me actually messages, Kai, at 100K, I'm going to be selling my holdings, at least some of it. And I totally get it, right? Because it seems such a high number. You want to take some profit because how much further can it possibly go, right? That's why a lot of people put a sales order at 100 or even at 99 or 98 before everybody else was selling. That's why there was a lot of selling pressure. However, obviously, since Trump was announced as the new US president coming into office in January next year, obviously, a lot of people have been extremely bullish, and that was really the main driver fueling the recent crypto rally that we've seen. And we expect Trump to be very crypto friendly going forward, and not just him, but also the people he will put into office. And that includes also his most recent pick for the SEC chair, which is the US Security and Exchange Commission. They oversee all the stock markets and potentially also crypto markets in the future, right? That remains to be discussed who is really looking after that, but most likely they will. So Trump last night came out and said that he would appoint Paul Atkins, a very crypto friendly person. I believe he's a lawyer. I didn't know too much about him before. That's a gentleman over here. And obviously, since he's so crypto friendly and he will be the one in charge overseeing all the crypto regulations, what have you, obviously the markets got extremely excited. More money was flowing into the markets, driving the price up. And that's when we finally saw Bitcoin surpassing the 100K mark. Just to remind ourselves, since Trump was elected in November 5th, the price of Bitcoin has increased by 45%, just on hopes that Trump and obviously his people he puts in office will be very crypto friendly. In fact, many people actually say we're only at the beginning of the crypto bull run. Once he's in office next year, we will see so much more exciting news and crypto friendly policy around crypto and Bitcoin in particular coming out, which can only be good for the market. And obviously, excitement drives excitement, right? The more we see the price of Bitcoin and other cryptos going up, the more other people want to go in, right? That FOMO, fear of missing out. People want to participate from those gains, right? Even if you never invested in crypto before and you always thought, it's useless, it's a scam, what have you. Well, now you're sitting on the sidelines and missing out on all those gains. So a lot of retail investors, but also institutional investors, they really feel now is the time. It has been validated as a solid investment class for institutions, right? It's not anymore those crazy swings up and down. And for retail, well, they see probably I'm going to get higher returns than if I invest into a low-cost index fund, S&P 500, for example, and so on, which I still continue to do and advocate for. But of course, it's tempting to see those juicy returns, especially when we look to the future, where we could potentially see even higher gains with Trump coming to office. And with the recent price increase of Bitcoin, it has now moved to 7th biggest asset in the world by market capitalization. You see that over here of just over $2 trillion. So just shy of Google, Alphabet. We just have Microsoft, Nvidia, and Apple ahead. And eventually, obviously, there is gold as the biggest asset still in the world. But I'm pretty sure in the not so distant future, we will actually see Bitcoin continuing to climb up the rank as one of the most valuable assets in the world, as the price for it will increase. And at the same time, I'm going to make a bold statement, but that's just my humble opinion. I believe as we see more money flowing into Bitcoin, we'll see some of the money or value going out of gold. Because personally, I think that's an investment class of the past. Now, some people will always keep their money in it. And there's nothing wrong with having some exposure to gold, even though personally I don't invest in it. But long term, I believe we're moving in an ever more digital world. So there will be a reallocation of assets, especially younger people and so forth. They want to have digital assets that they can move quickly around the world with very low fees, which you can't exactly do with gold. So I believe there will be even further devaluation of the market market cap over here, or even if it increases, it will definitely increase slower than the price and value of Bitcoin long term. With regards to the overall crypto markets, we see that of course we are in extreme greed territory, right? Currently 85, so people are greedy, they have that FOMO, everybody sees the prices going up, new millionaires being made seemingly every day. I'm based now in the UAE, in Dubai. I meet so many people who made their money with crypto, and of course then you think, why do I continue investing into the S&P 500, right, where I get 10% return? Seems so boring, right? But of course, I'll come to this in a moment, how I personally will continue investing myself. But of course, you can definitely feel the greed visibly online when you read about it. There's more scams happening because it is so valuable crypto, right? So that's when you know you're really in a bull market. People are getting greedy. In terms of Bitcoin versus altcoin season, a lot of people think that right now is the altcoin season because we have now seen such a price appreciation for Bitcoin. First, Bitcoin starts appreciating and then all the other altcoin and meme coins will sort of follow afterwards. So a lot of people actually, if they made now some profits with Bitcoin, they use those profits and reinvest it into altcoin to benefit from those gains as well. Now, once again, that's a personal decision. I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I will only continue investing into Bitcoin. But if you want to trade a little bit more, which can be more risky, you could potentially sort of double dip, right? You make the money with Bitcoin first and then reshift into some other altcoins. But of course, it also has a higher risk to it because it may or may not happen. And you might actually end up having lower gains than you would have with Bitcoin. In terms of Bitcoin dominance, right now, of all the crypto value in the world, 55% of it comes from Bitcoin. Now, it used to be even higher, I think at some stage over 60%, so it came down a little bit, but that's also good that it kind of diversifies a little bit. But still, of course, it shows that Bitcoin is the granddaddy of all cryptocurrency and has been so for many years. And we see here the total crypto market cap of all the various crypto altogether. Of course, you can break it up by all the various coins, but let's look at the total overall market cap for crypto. It really consistently went up over the last year. I mean, it's now the highest that's ever been. The highest previously was back over here in 2021, but now we're getting close to 4 trillion total market value of all cryptocurrencies added together. So definitely looking pretty bright. And when we compare that to gold, it's getting closer and closer. And I believe we're still really early days. So that number will be significantly higher if I was to make the same video a year from now. So I have no doubt about that. With this, let's also look into the Bitcoin ETFs because of course they have been a major driver for the price appreciation of Bitcoin. We see here the total net inflow into all the various Bitcoin ETFs has been $682 million over the last 30 days. Over the last 1 year, a total inflow of $1.7 billion. I mean, mind-boggling numbers, absolutely incredible, which brings the total assets under management by all the various ETF holdings to $58 billion. So that's all the various Bitcoin-related ETFs, only Bitcoin, which obviously is the biggest of all the ETFs, to over 58 billion. So really, really incredible. And you see the inflows and outflows by days. And it's quite interesting, right? As soon as the price of Bitcoin falls, it seems people get scared and they sell. As soon as it appreciates in value, people buy, which is kind of counterintuitive, but the same happens often with stocks and so forth. When people are greedy, they put their money in. When they're fearful, they sell and sometimes materialize their losses. So of course, the question is, where do we go from here? Now that we crossed the $100,000 mark, what's next, right? Now, while I'm personally invested in Bitcoin and I'm really passionate about it, I'm by no means an expert on the topic, but someone who certainly is, that's Saylor. And he actually sees Bitcoin going to 13 million by 2045, which is a crazy number to think about it. That's the gentleman over here, and he's really one of the brightest minds in the space. In general, really listen to him, watch some videos, podcasts of him, unbelievable, so smart. And he sees Bitcoin appreciating on average by 29% for the next 21 years, which actually doesn't sound that crazy, 29%, right? When we think that S&P appreciates by 10%, that's only 3x of S&P 500, which kind of seems doable. And if that was to happen, it would certainly get to that number eventually. And obviously, he attributes a lot to increased adoption by everyday investors, retail, institutional investors, ETFs, all the things we already spoke about, as well as more crypto-friendly regulations coming out of Washington and the US, because the hope is that the US really becomes a leading power in cryptocurrency, and potentially even central banks around the world consider having some of their reserves kept in Bitcoin, right? Maybe shifting from some other assets such as US dollars or gold into having some exposure to Bitcoin and use that for their reserves. So if that was to happen, that would put huge buying pressure on Bitcoin and of course bring the price up significantly. And I really love what he said over here, where he says every Bitcoin that you don't buy today is going to cost you 13 million in the future. So that's a nice way of thinking about it, right? Because right now it might seem like a lot paying 100,000 for it, right? And you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy a fraction of it, right? You can buy 0.001 of a Bitcoin, right? So only $100, $10, doesn't matter. But over time, basically, as the value of it increases, so does the value of your tiny little holding, right? So too many people think, oh, it's 100,000, I can never afford it. You can buy fractional ownership of Bitcoin as well. I started off with very little, right? Eventually I got to 1 and hopefully I'll get to more in the future. And why I listen to Michael Saylor? Because he actually walks the talk. There's a website called the Saylor Tracker where we can monitor all his buys and sells. Well, he doesn't actually sell anything, he only buys. And right now his total holdings of Bitcoin is 41 billion, almost as much as all the Bitcoin ETFs together, which is absolutely mind-boggling. His company is the single biggest holder of Bitcoin of all public companies out there, and only now slowly other companies have started to acquire some Bitcoin on their balance sheets as well. And I really like that he keeps on buying no matter what, right? He buys at high prices, he buys at low prices, he buys at high prices, he buys even at lower prices. And even his most recent buy was at $97,800, pretty much at all-time highs. People say, is the guy crazy? Why would you buy at such prices? Well, since he bought it, he's already up 285 million on that purchase alone. It just shows you the power of dollar cost averaging into an asset where you see long-term price appreciation. Now, of course, we do have to keep in mind that there will be price corrections along the way. No asset only ever goes up, right? These are historic drawdowns that we've seen after all-time highs, and we've seen this time and time again. Back in 2012, we had a drawdown of 92%. Crazy numbers, right? Then back in 2015, minus 80%. Then again in 19, down 81%. And then the most recent one back in 2022, down 75% of its all-time high value. So while it's always easy in hindsight to say, if only I bought it earlier, right? The question is, will you have the conviction to weather the storm if really things go south and the value of your crypto drops big time? Imagine right now we're spending, I don't know, $50,000 on Bitcoin, and then overnight it drops by 50%. Will you still have the conviction, or will you panic sell? And a lot of people actually panic sell. And that's exactly a problem. Or at the same time, the benefit of those who do believe in it long term, because these things will continue to happen. And I'm pretty sure we'll see this again in 25 or 26. There will be corrections along the way. And some people, they wait too long for it until we see a correction. But then actually when the correction happens, the problem is a lot of people freak out, right? Because then you think, well, now maybe finally it's the end of Bitcoin. It has been too good to be true. It's finally crashing and it's not going to come back anymore. So while in theory right now we would be hoping for a crash, a major correction to happen to buy more of it, when it does come to the crash, a lot of people panic and prefer to stay on the sideline until they see a little bit of recovery. But then the recovery usually goes so fast that they missed out the train. And once again, they wish they would have bought earlier. And that just kind of keeps on happening. And again, nobody can really predict the price of Bitcoin in the future, nor when the corrections will happen. And that's why I'm a big fan of dollar cost averaging. And honestly, I really thought about it because for a while now, I haven't bought any more Bitcoin. I have what I had. I bought at, my average price at around $48,000, $49,000 on average when I bought it. That was a while back, but since then I haven't really bought much more of it. Now I am using Nexo, where I keep quite a bit of my funds sitting over here, and I am earning nice interest. So I am technically getting more Bitcoin on my Bitcoin, right? I'm getting interest on that. Currently, I'm earning 3.25% on my Bitcoin holding, as well as some of my partners are paying me in Bitcoin as well. But overall, it's really small additions to my overall portfolio holdings. And while I was personally waiting for a correction to happen, as I just mentioned before, I just don't know when it will happen, right? And if I see people like Michael Saylor buying all that ETF money flowing towards Bitcoin, more and more institutional money coming into it, other public company taking it on their balance sheet, Washington becoming more and more crypto friendly, and US really wanting to become the clear crypto leader in the world, potentially their central bank adopting Bitcoin as well as a reserve. The stars are really aligned for it. And while Bitcoin is already my second biggest holding after my real estate holding, I was hoping to invest more into the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 that I have been doing regularly every single week. I personally think that in the coming years, Bitcoin will quite likely outperform those two ETFs that I just spoke about. And therefore, I think I will start once again dollar cost averaging also more into Bitcoin, not necessarily other cryptocurrencies, because I don't really understand them too well. And there's so many to choose from. I don't know who's going to be the winner. There's so many great projects out there. I have no doubt, right? We've seen XRP and Ripple being one of the potential leaders. There are other great stable coins, there are other altcoins. I'm not even talking about meme coins, but there's so many ways to make money. But ultimately, you have to find what works for you. And I'm really happy with Bitcoin. And we've seen the crazy returns. And as I said, with all the stars aligned for Bitcoin, what I can understand and what I really like is the hard cap limit of 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be in circulation. And while so far the majority has been mined, obviously it will still take a couple of years until all of them have been mined. But also keep in mind that not all of those that are already mined and are in circulation are actually available, because a lot of Bitcoin apparently has already been lost. There's estimates that say around 3.8 million Bitcoins have been lost, where people lost access to it or just forgot their passwords and can't access their wallets anymore. So honestly, that's a big topic, which in turn reduces the actual Bitcoin people can buy. And less Bitcoin means higher prices for it, right? More people bidding for less Bitcoins in circulation will naturally drive up the price going forward. So yes, I'm obviously not oblivious to the excitement around Bitcoin. I have already started earlier, so I'm happy about this. But even now, I think we're still early days when we look at the long-term projections. Now, I don't know about 13 million. I'll be very happy if we hit that eventually. Nobody knows. But even if we hit 500,000 or eventually 1 million, which I could definitely see in a couple of years, that's still 10x from now, right? If you were to invest 50,000, let's say, that could be 500,000 in a couple of years. And honestly, that definitely will outperform the S&P 500 or NASDAQ 100. But again, it may also not, right? And we will have drawdowns along the way. And that's why I will personally start once again to dollar cost average into Bitcoin, probably on a weekly or monthly basis. I'll still have to think about it. And I'll be happy to make a future video about this, which platform I use and how I set it up. And if you're interested, let me know in the comments down below. I'll be happy to make such a video. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a like. It helps it to be seen by more people. Next up, check out this video right here. As always, thanks a lot for watching. Stay healthy, get wealthy, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.